Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Underground. I'm Karin Blakolmer, and Paro-NCO Biosciences is a biotech in Chicago that was founded by two extremes, two mycologists and neuropsychiatrists. And I joined about 1.5 years ago, and I come from the oncology world. I come from 20 years of hardcore drug development, working with the FDA and EMA. So what you will see is a slightly different look on psychedelics. What I will show you is the initial studies that we did. So I will show you data about who uses psychedelics, whether there's a difference in the mushrooms. Remember, we are a mushroom company, on the psychedelic effect. And then can we apply everything that we have learned from the human underground to a different underground, to mice, and to preclinical experiments. The goal of the company is to produce an enhanced psilocybin, a psilocybin whose neuroplastic effects are enhanced by additional components found in the mushrooms. We want to find a drug that does not cause a trip, and we want to produce this in a scalable manner. So our first question was, who uses psychedelics? And for that, I have worked with a colleague of mine from the oncology world, who is an economist. And we have done a lot of health outcomes and research together. And he has a epidemiological company who does surveys in the whole of the US. What I'm presenting to you is US. It's not global, not Europe, just US. And this is a representative sample of US adults older than 18 years who are representative in terms of region where they live, representative in terms of age, gender, and race. All they have to do, they have to have a computer, they have to sign up, and then they get rotated through monthly questionnaires. And the questionnaire that we fielded about psychedelic use was run from November 2020 to March 21. It was during the height of the pandemic. And it was run for these months for the first week. And we got 7,000 responses of people who have or have not used psychedelics. We applied 7 different questionnaires to them about general health, mental health, physical health, comorbidities, health resources, and also an anxiety questionnaire and a depression questionnaire. And what we thought we would find would be very similar to what we saw from European epidemiological research, that people use psychedelics for the betterment of themselves, for broadening their experience, but that was not the case. Firstly, we found out that a larger percentage of Americans than previously reported used psychedelics. It was, previous reports were around 2 to 3%. If you were in the meeting this morning, you saw that. We found 7.4% of US adults had used psychedelics in the last 12 months, because that was the question, have you used psychedelics in the last 12 months? About half of them used mushrooms and something else, other psychedelics, and half of them used mushrooms only. What we did is then we eliminated the ones that used other psychedelics, and we only used the mushroom users and compared them to the non-mushroom users in terms of the questionnaires we had asked. what we found is that the mushroom users, there were more males, they were younger, there were more Latinos and Hispanics than as compared to other races. More of them were in the West. This is California, where it's probably not so surveyed. And what was very interesting is that about 60% said they used it for the experience, for broadening the mind, but 50%, almost 50% of all users said they used it for mental health issues, for either anxiety or depression, and it was either self-diagnosed or clinically diagnosed, which was much higher than what we saw in other epidemiological research. We also found that the mushroom users, as compared to the non-psychedelic users, were sicker. They had a higher Charleston comorbidity index. They had more anxiety, more depression, more emergency room visits, more healthcare research use, and they also had more insomnia and more migraine. And they were less likely to have health insurance. So our conclusion was that people in the US, to a large extent, use psychedelics for self-medication, and they use it because they do not have access to regular medical care, they don't have health insurance, and they are clearly suffering. We did not find a difference in terms of income, socioeconomic status, or education. And what you see at the bottom here are the mental components, anxiety, depression, and that was statistically significant. And when we weighted these results of this representative sample to the overall US population, it came to 17 million US adults using psychedelics at least once a year. We also, you realize we fielded this questionnaire during the height of the pandemic after a particularly vicious and nail-biting election. We also asked the question whether that had an influence on their psychedelic use, and the answer was no. So clearly a big difference between US and European or ex-US adults in psychedelic use. And then, of course, so we can do better than this. The next question, this is a real picture from a real psychedelic journal. My fantasy is not big enough for this. What we then asked, we used that same system of epidemiological research to ask, what do people actually feel when they take psychedelics? And we have heard from people we spoke to, people in our company, that this mushroom relieves my anxiety, this mushroom makes me more open to the world. And what we wanted to know is this really true? Is this something that can be found consistently? And what we also did is we had a very complex questionnaire in our previous research. This questionnaire was much simpler. So we just asked participants to list we had a list of the 10 most commonly used psychedelic mushrooms in the US. And we listed them, and we asked the general US public, well, first of all, did you take mushrooms? Which mushroom did you take? And then we had a scale from 1 to 10 about what was the general experience, what was the visual experience, was it more, was it less, and what is known in that language as body load. It's a term that is used in the psychedelic world, and it's just what they feel are the bodily experiences. And we were very happy because this was done during 1 week in July 2022. We had 2,300 participants, and we said, yeah, that's fantastic. We've got so many people. Half of them we eliminated immediately because they had not taken any mushrooms. And then the ones that had taken mushrooms, we had actually introduced a fictional mushroom. And almost 90% crossed that fictional mushroom. So we ended, and then we also used some artificial intelligence where we can see whether somebody just copies something from the internet. And so we excluded maybe 1%, not a lot, but we were quite surprised that we had to exclude all these participants, and we only ended up with 112 people. And when we asked them, what was your experience on the mushrooms? And you see it here on the lower part, the very colorful part, it was basically all over the place. Because what our aim was when we started the study was that we would have a clearer picture of which mushroom causes more visual effects, which mushroom causes more bodily effects, and then analyze the mushroom and see from the additional tryptamines, what is it that could account for that. Now, that went out of the window with this, because you can see the confidence intervals. Most of the experiences were around 5 or 6 on a scale to 10, with the confidence intervals going 3 points in either direction, so it could really be anything. And then we thought, well, now we have the general public, they're probably not so educated, and maybe we should talk to the real psychonauts, the ones that take mushrooms all the time, that take this mushroom for this, that mushroom for that, and let's do that. So we went to a Facebook group, and we had 37 participants. We did not insult them with a fake mushroom because we are not expecting them to fall for that one. What we found in general as compared to, because we also looked at the general population, the known mushroom population, the psychonauts, the ones that take mushrooms on a regular basis, they were older. There were vastly more men than women. And what was interesting also is that their general experience seemed to be lower. So that goes into the direction, if somebody takes mushrooms only once in a while, they go, or has never taken them before, they go for the highest possible effect. And the ones that take mushrooms all the time, they can dose them much better than the ones that are just taking it out of curiosity. And unfortunately, also the results were equally all over the place. So we could not, it was the same when it came to visual and bodily experience. It went all the scale of the confidence interval, and there was no clear pattern. Now, I'm showing this, and it took us a long time to interpret it, and I'm showing this not to discount the fact that there may be different effects. But our conclusion is that real-world evidence is very, very hard. And we also heard it this morning, because in this study, you basically we have introduced all the biases that you can possibly introduce. It's the recall bias. We don't know whether the people who said, I took a subtropicalis, whether they really took a subtropicalis. We don't know what psilocybin dose they had, because it's a mushroom. We don't know if it was a dried mushroom, a fresh mushroom, because that also has an effect on the degradation, not just of the psilocybin, but also of all the other components that could have an effect. So there are non-hallucinogenic tryptamines, there are beta-carbolines, there are terpenes, and they all could have an effect that modifies the experience. So don't go away and say, well, there's nothing behind it, because this just shows how difficult it is to do real-world evidence and to adjust for all the possible biases that we can find. I'm not even talking about the placebo effect, which is not just for psychedelics, by the way. So after we've done with that underground, and I should mention that we are fully DEA licensed laboratory, we went to a different underground where we said, well, maybe, and I'm standing in front of the most important picture, maybe we see what's happening in mice. And that was conducted in Israel at Brain Labs by Professor Bernard Lehrer. And we worked together to see whether there is a difference between chemical psilocybin, which we kindly received from USONA, and full spectrum mushroom extract. So it's not a whole mushroom, it's the extract. And it's a methanol extract from a cubensis species that is very commonly available in the US. Now, when it comes to behavioral animal experiments, the mice are actually not very different from the human sample that you have seen in the previous slide, because all these experiments, such as the open field test, the marble burying test, the tail suspension test, those are anthropomorphic tests that were designed for SSRIs. And all people are looking at when we are looking at psychedelics is the head twitch. Well, the head twitch just shows that there's something happening in the brain of the mouse, but it may not necessarily affect the behavior of the mouse. And needless to say that we had experiments that one day they worked, another day they did not work. And that made us happy and unhappy on different days. But what we did look at was something that cannot do in humans, is we looked at the early gene expression, and we looked at synaptic proteins as a surrogate marker for neuroplasticity, and we also looked at metabolomics. So this is actually the experiment, and I'm trying not to step on the light. The mouse was injected either with chemical psilocybin or with full mushroom extract with an equivalent amount of psilocybin. So the psilocybin was exactly the same, but the full spectrum had other tryptamines and other compounds in it. Mouse was head twitching for 20 minutes. We didn't see a difference between the chemical psilocybin and the full mushroom extract, because we didn't expect it because they had the same amount of psilocybin. Then the mice were tested after 2 days. And as I said, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. For marble burying, you actually have to audition the mice because not every mouse will marble bury. And then we looked again after 9 to 11 days. And we looked at behavior. Tail suspension tests did show a difference. And then we looked at the synaptic proteins. So remember, this is after 9 to 11 days. This is long term. And we also looked at the brain metabolomics. When we looked at the synaptic proteins, we took brain tissue from 4 different regions, from the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the striatum. And what you see here on the right, FSME is full spectrum mushroom extract on 3 synaptic proteins, GAP43, PS095, and synaptophysin. We saw a clear difference and long-term difference after 11 days of superiority of full spectrum mushroom extract over psilocybin alone. So there is something there that it enhances the neuroplastic effect of psilocybin. I have not spoken about the triplus administration, the triplus schedule. This is what we have tried and succeeded on the top, where we tested, although with chemical psilocybin, several agonists and antagonists of the serotonin receptors. And what we found is that when we give psilocybin together with buspirone, which is a partial HT1A agonist, we can avoid the trip, and we can also keep the mice from burying marbles. But again, I mean, those animal experiments, they are not very reliable. So we are relying on surrogate markers. And what we are currently doing is working with a knockout mouse, which has an obsessive compulsive behavior as an adult and an autistic behavior as an adolescent. And that was my last slide. And the lights are on. Any questions?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much for your talk. And yeah, are there any questions from the audience?
I can scream. Yeah? Oh, sorry. It's on. My question is, where do we go from here? Because I know that a lot of researchers are, for many different reasons, using mostly, especially in clinical trials, chemically produced synthetic psilocin or psilocybin. And there are many people who do understand that the full spectrum, just like in cannabis, is more effective. But how do we now make this jump from this amazing research into getting this into clinical trials?
Yeah, I mean, there are 2 ways of doing it. There's the, and I shouldn't say there's an easy way and a hard way, because I mean, both of them are hard. One is to go the biological route and give full spectrum extract. But this is going to be incredibly difficult because you cannot grow enough mushrooms in this world. We have seen it just producing the full spectrum for the mice, which are arguably much smaller than humans. And we had, like, our entire floor was full of mushrooms, because a mushroom is only between 1% and 2% of psilocybin. The other thing is also you cannot consistently produce. I mean, there's no, the entourage is not consistent. So you could go the biological route, where you, by some miracle, grow the mushroom that you don't need 5 kilos of a mushroom for 20 mice, and try to register it like that, but it's going to be very hard. The other thing is, what we are going to do, what we are planning to do if we get money, is to identify the compound that actually adds to the efficacy of the psilocybin. because then you have the psilocybin, you have the compound, you can play with the ratio, you can increase it, and then you actually have a drug that you can consistently give to a patient, where every patient gets the same amount of psilocybin, which is happening now, but also the same amount of whatever the compound or the compounds are that are enhancing the efficacy of the psilocybin. So that's going to be something that, it's a screening experiment. You cannot do it in mice. We are trying zebrafish now. But this is the way we want to go.
Have you, thank you for the talk, anyway. Have you done any research into if there's differences in side effects?
That is a very good question. And I'm coming back to my oncology world. It is very hard to show side effects in mice. Usually, you show side effects in dogs, in monkeys, in rats, but in mice, you are just looking, are they dying or are they being alive? I can give you one anecdote, because I also have mouse anecdotes. We have our SAPAP3 mouse, which is the genetically modified mouse. We first gave the mouse full spectrum psilocybin. And those are mice that are, I should explain it, those are mice that are really obsessive compulsive, and they are grooming. They are grooming excessively to the extent where they're really damaging themselves, they're hurting themselves. And so we gave full spectrum psilocybin to the mice, and one of the mice groomed themselves to a point where it was, well, that mouse is suffering too much, we have to sacrifice it. Now, if you sacrifice a mouse in an experiment, it's actually the ethics committee gets involved. So you don't want to do that. Yeah, I see, it's like there are ethics committees, all the animal experiments have to go to ethics committees. So you want to avoid sacrificing an animal because of side effects. So in our desperation, we actually gave the mouse a second dose. And it worked. So I cannot answer your question about side effects, because for that you need bigger animals. But from the mice, it's just we did not see any obvious differences.
So it went into one direction one time and back to the
yes,
normal the
yeah.
time.
I wouldn't say it was back to normal, but it was. It was clearly. It was not. I mean, it stopped. Biting its fingernails. Okay. No more questions? Well, then, thank you very much.